Hold on tight, what just happened in Burkina Faso is a game changer for Africa's future. Ibrahim Traoré's bold move has sent shockwaves across the continent, with missiles striking deep into Burkinabe soil, challenging traditional power dynamics and sparking a new era of African independence. Is this the beginning of a new chapter where Africa takes control of its destiny? Or is it a warning of the turbulence ahead? Stick around as we reveal the shocking details behind this daring attack and what it means for Africa's rise on the world stage. This is a story you cannot afford to miss. A silent wake-up call. At 5:42 a.m., as the sun prepared to rise over the Sahel, 2 guided missiles descended upon a modest outpost in Burkina Faso's Yatena province. The outpost was vital, a relay station connecting remote security posts to central command. It was not a battlefield, but a symbol of connectivity, resilience, and sovereignty. Flames engulfed the structure within seconds, and by the time emergency responders arrived, 3 lives had been lost, 2 soldiers and a civilian technician, and 7 others injured. The communications tower, crucial for border security and regional coordination, was reduced to twisted metal. What made this assault particularly striking was its origin, a U.S. military base in Niger, over 600 kilometers away. The United States claimed it was a counter-terror operation, but the lack of coordination, prior warning, or shared intelligence left many questions unanswered. The strike was unilateral, an act of force that bypassed Burkina Faso's sovereignty, igniting a firestorm of outrage across Africa. A nation's calm response. President Ibrahim Traoré's measured response was a stark contrast to the violence of the attack. Addressing the nation later that day, his words were calm yet resolute. He declared the strike an attack on the dignity of the Burkinabe people, an affront to their right to govern themselves. His tone was deliberate, designed not to incite anger, but to reinforce a message. Burkina Faso would stand firm as a sovereign nation. In Revolution Square, thousands gathered, not in fury, but in defiance. They held signs, sang, and stood shoulder to shoulder, embodying resilience and unity. Demonstrations spread across cities like Bamako, Dakar, Nairobi, and beyond. The message was clear: Africa is no longer silent. The continent would not accept being spoken over or ignored, challenging the global narrative. Western media framed the incident as part of the ongoing fight against terrorism. The U.S. and its allies justified the strike under the banner of regional security. But for many Africans, the narrative was painfully familiar. It echoed a long history of decisions made elsewhere, decisions that often disregarded local sovereignty and human lives. The question reverberated across the continent: if a sovereign African state can be targeted without its consent, then who among us is truly safe? This strike was not just a military action, it was an assertion of influence, a reminder that Africa's voice remains secondary in the global order, the power of unity and dignity. The immediate response to the strike was a wave of national and Pan-African solidarity. Burkina Faso's government responded with restraint, increasing security around critical infrastructure but refraining from escalation. President Traoré's televised address was a masterclass in leadership, calm, clear, and unyielding. He emphasized that the attack was a challenge to Africa's right to control its destiny. That evening, the streets of Ouagadougou filled with peaceful demonstrations. Over 30,000 citizens gathered in Revolution Square, not to riot, but to affirm their unity and resolve. Similar gatherings emerged in Mali, Guinea, Ghana, and Kenya. Citizens demanded transparency, questioning the nature of the alleged threat that prompted the strike. Were there terrorists? Who were they? Why was there no prior consultation or shared intelligence? The silence from the U.S. and its allies only intensified suspicion. No photos, no names, no independent verification, only a vague claim of neutralizing a terrorist threat. This lack of transparency fueled outrage and a sense of betrayal, awakening a collective memory of colonial control, neo-colonial interference, and the ongoing struggle for respect and recognition. A continental awakening. Within 24 hours, African news outlets branded the event as the strike that woke the continent. Hashtags like #OneOurLand, Our Right trended across social media, uniting voices from Lome to Lamu. Citizens demanded accountability, respect, and a re-evaluation of Africa's place in global security arrangements. The African Union, recognizing the significance of the moment, held an emergency summit, one of the quickest in its history. Foreign ministers from 42 nations convened virtually, expressing solidarity and concern. President Traoré's address from Addis Ababa was unambiguous. If one African nation's sovereignty can be violated without consequence, then no nation is truly independent. A shift in power dynamics. The reactions from governments varied but shared a common undercurrent, a recognition that Africa's sovereignty was being challenged. Nigeria, Ghana, Guinea, and others condemned the strike outright, calling for respect and dialogue. Citizens took to streets, demonstrating in Mali, lighting candles in Conakry and marching in Nairobi, demanding answers, justice, and a new respect for African agency. Meanwhile, Western responses ranged from cautious to dismissive. The Pentagon maintained that the strike was legitimate but offered no concrete evidence. Congressional critics warned that unilateral military actions set dangerous precedents, undermining international law and sovereignty. The global moral divide. This incident revealed a profound moral and political divide. Western media framed the attack through the lens of terrorism and regional instability, emphasizing security concerns. In contrast, African outlets focused on sovereignty, dignity, and justice. This divergence exposed a global order where power remains concentrated among a few, and the voices of the many are often silenced or ignored. Russia and China condemned the strike outright, framing it as neo-imperial aggression. Their statements resonated with many Africans, who saw in this condemnation a recognition of their struggles against external interference, building back trust and self-reliance. In the days following the attack, Burkina Faso's government took concrete steps to reinforce sovereignty. They reviewed and suspended some military cooperation agreements, emphasizing the need for full mutual consent. Legislation was passed to restrict foreign surveillance and increase funding for domestic intelligence and security services. These measures aim to reduce dependency on Western powers and assert control over national security. Culturally, the incident sparked a renaissance of African creativity. Artists and writers responded with plays, poetry, murals, and songs celebrating resilience, unity, and sovereignty. Teachers explained the events to children, emphasizing the importance of independence and self-determination. Leadership in a time of crisis. President Traoré's leadership became a symbol of calm strength. His focus on transparency, unity, and strategic restraint contrasted sharply with the chaos and uncertainty elsewhere. His approval ratings soared, especially among youth, embodying a new generation that demands respect and agency. The broader implications. The Burkina Faso strike was a turning point, a moment when Africa's collective consciousness awakened to the realities of external interference. It challenged the long-held notion that the continent must accept conditions dictated from outside, asserting instead that dignity, respect, and sovereignty are non-negotiable, a new dawn or a dangerous path. Some will view President Traoré's calm resolve as risky, potentially inviting further aggression. Others see it as necessary, a demonstration that Africa can stand tall, refuse silence, and shape its destiny. The silent strength displayed in the wake of the attack signals that sovereignty is more than words on a flag. It is about action, resolve, and the unwavering belief that a nation's voice must be heard and respected. A continent reimagined. The missiles that struck Burkina Faso may have landed on a remote outpost, but their impact reverberated across Africa and beyond. They awakened a continent long conditioned to accept external decisions, urging it to reclaim its voice. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership exemplifies a new era, one where dignity and sovereignty are not just ideals, but practices rooted in resolve and unity. As Africa stands at this crossroads, the question remains, what will the world do when a young nation refuses to be silenced? Will it listen, respect, and recognize the continent's right to define its own destiny? Or will it continue to overlook the fundamental truth that sovereignty is not about borders alone, but about the power to say no? The answer lies in the choices ahead. But one thing is clear, Africa's moment of awakening is irreversible, and its voice can no longer be ignored.